Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 93 of the Dan Gheesling podcast. Hey, I'm kind of into numbers, but not really. Knocking on the door. We're getting close to the 100. I'd like to do something special for maybe the 96th episode, but not the 100th. So let's let that one simmer for a second. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Whether you got your earbuds in Skokie, Illinois, riding your bike, or walking your pot-bellied pig in Albuquerque, New Mexico, or maybe, you're doing some yard work in Moxie, Kansas. Either way, thank you guys so much for being here. Got a lot of updates, some interesting stuff to talk about, and just want to update you guys with another audio pipe and hot journal in terms of what's been going well, what hasn't been going well, and maybe go a little in depth on a couple things. First thing I want to talk about is, I think I've talked about it a little bit in the past, but it's always gets in it when you talk about negotiating and stuff like that. I don't talk about it a ton and that sort of thing, but I want to lean into it because something happened probably about 2 weeks ago that was an interesting situation that I learned from, and I think you may also gain something from. Is the bottom line. When people hear negotiate, I think I don't know what the reactions of everyone are, but I know some people like shudder and like, oh, I don't like to negotiate. For whatever reason. Sometimes it can be uncomfortable, and sometimes people, don't feel comfortable doing it or feel that, whatever. And some people love to negotiate, but how I feel about negotiation is like, it's got to end up with both people being really happy or being happy. Maybe not ecstatic, but happy, right? So, for example, if you're working something out and you're like, well, hey, I'd love to work with this person, but I don't know. It's just my take on negotiation is if one person's happy and one person's not. It's like in a negotiation, I don't look at it as one person wins and one person loses. If that's the case, then it wasn't a good negotiation, because for me, it's just whether it's like a price on something, time you're working on something, whatever, you just want both people to feel good about it, because then things can move forward and grow. That's just my take on it. I know everyone has different takes on it, but anyways, long story short, there was some I don't like using the term fan art, but there's some fan art done in the community. I'm not going to point anything out because the point is not to call anyone out, but maybe just to present a scenario in which people, you can learn something and I can share what I learned. But anyways, there's some really, really very well done fan art done in the community, and person reached out and said, hey, I made this, and I and I said it was awesome. It was amazing. It was very well done. And the person, no one asked this person to do it. They just put it together. I don't know if because they enjoyed it or whatever. They put it together, and I approached them like, hey, I would love to buy this, so I could use it sometime in the future. I may use it for X, Y, or Z. I may not, but most likely there's a chance it could be used, on merch or something in the future. I'd love to buy it. Could we work something out? And it's like the individual was like, yeah, we can, I could sell it to you for X amount of money. And the X was like, the X was like in the stratosphere in terms of that. And it's not like, oh, this was like really close to being on the high end of what, an individual or, a streamer or a person who makes content on the internet would pay for it. It wasn't like the high end. It was like corporate, a huge corporation would probably pay for it in that regard. And so the thing I took from it is right away, like, I wasn't disappointed. I just knew there was no negotiating from that point forward, and not on my end, right? Because when things are like that far apart, and I don't want to give specific details, but when a negotiation is that far apart, it's like, okay, hey, look, I understand that that's what you think it's worth, and I believe it's worth that in like a corporate environment, but if I were to pay for something like that, we'd be done. Or if I were to pay that money for, essentially for some digital art, like the show would be done. There would be no show, there'd be no YouTube, because I'd be out of business. And so it's always like, in particular, stuff like that, it's always a not precarious position, because for me, I always want to pay people as much as possible, within the confines of being able to run the business, right? So, and if someone is hard lines and they're like, hey, this is what it's worth, and I'm like, dude, cool. I don't doubt that that's worth that, but I can't pay that. And I'm sorry. And then from there, it kind of like really, really backpedaled really fast. And the person's like, no, you can just do, use this. And at that point, like, just to be honest, my level of comfort was like completely shot. I just, when I realized we were that far apart, it's like, okay, I love the artwork, but in terms of what I think the hoops to jump through, and I don't want to use the term hassle, but the hassle to deal with from forward, to me, it's like part of, when I like to work with people or bring people on or hire people to, animate or whatever, like I want to be able to, like a negotiation, right? A win-win scenario where that person feels good and I feel good about it. And no matter, once that kind of set off, it just, I never felt good again. And it's nothing against the person, but I think it's important when you're doing or quoting or anything, it's important to have like an open dialogue, right? So, hey, what is your budget? Or, maybe do a little research on, hey, people in this realm typically will pay this, or this is what the typical rate is for this, for a corporation, for a mid-level business, for a small business, or for an individual. And like I said, it was a learning experience for me, but it was kind of like, I'm in a very, very much different place where maybe 10 years ago I would be like, how does that person feel like that, that's worth it, or anything like but to me, it just came down to, comfort level and not really being aware of, what to charge, and I don't want to come off as like high and mighty, because that's not the case, right, at all. But, on the flip side, when negotiating with Xandra Art, who did the animation art for the Surso Eat Lore video, like to me, that was like a win-win scenario. She came out with a price. I'm like, hey, like, can we cut a couple things and shorten the length? And I know that, so I'm like, hey, can we remove some of the detail to get the price down? She's like, yeah, that's fine. And I'm like, hey, on my end, I know that, I'm asking for a really quick turnaround time, so it's okay if like 50% of it is not animated. So it's like back and forth. It's like, hey, I'm trying to do something to make it easier for you. You do something to make it easy for me. And ultimately with Xandra Art, I don't want to, reveal any details, but I know that she felt good about the animation process and working with me, and I felt really good because she delivered on, the vision and what we talked about. And after I said, hey, look, like, what can I do better? Or moving forward, if you want to do more, what can we do different? And, so we talked about that. And so I think having, like, to me, really, and when it comes to like business and hiring and money and especially stuff around the channel, like, I don't know. It's just how I feel on it. Like, I would say first impressions aren't everything, because they're not, but just kind of how you approach and communicate about something, especially whenever money comes up, like, it just, I don't want to say a different mindset comes in, but you just gotta kind of be in the realm of things. And I don't know. And you're like, well, Dan, how do you do that? So if you're in art or whatever business you're in, you're like, hey, you don't know where to start. A great place is to just ask the person, hey, what's your budget? And then kind of work from there. Now, on the other end of it, I don't want to say always hardline, because that's not the case, but you kind of you don't want to pay someone, say, hey, I could pay X amount of dollars for something, and then they deliver something that they could have delivered it to you for half of X. But I don't know. I don't want to get super into negotiation, but the thing I took from it, and the thing I hope you can take from it, is if you're on the bidding end of something, meaning you're giving a bid or anything like that, always try to communicate as much as possible. Try to get as much information. Hey, what have you paid for, this kind of art in the past? Like, all that kind of stuff is really helpful. The more information you can collect, the better. And it wasn't an offense thing at all. Like, I wasn't offended that this person asked for a ton of money, but I did maybe think that person, I don't know if I didn't think they were trying to take advantage of me. That wasn't the case, but I'm just like, man, okay, we're really, really far off. And so that's okay. But I just don't think I could, knowingly move forward working with someone like that. It just is what it is. It's not to say that it wouldn't have worked out or anything like that, but it's just how I felt. And at the end of the day, for me, when I have to make a decision about working with someone or not, it's always on a gut feel, or really on anything. It's like, if it doesn't feel right, then don't do it. And that's okay. And it's, not everyone is meant to work together. It doesn't mean one person's bad and one person's good at all. It's just like, hey, people kind of can work together and fit like puzzle pieces. Sometimes, you got to cut up and to fit together. But anyways, I know I went a little bit of rant on that. So that's something I've been wanting to talk about. So I hope, maybe you learn a little bit from that. I know I definitely did. The thing I learned is, and I think it more so than ever on this one, I was just really, really quick to be like, okay, cool. Like, I hope it was awesome. I love the art. I just don't think we can work together. For me, I went with my gut and I went quick because the more and more I move on, is like, I don't want to sit there, and this whole thing's about negotiating. I don't want to sit there and go back and forth for 3 hours either, right? Like, hey, what's important to you? What can I give on? What can you give on? And let's move it from there. So that was one thing. Another thing that kind of ties into that about not feeling great, but really feeling good, is the game selection lately on the channel, in particular on Twitch, has been really well, right? So I talked about this a little bit on Check the Wire, which is a podcast that was going to come out tomorrow, but I picked Undertale, which is a huge divergence from what we would normally play on the show, and it went really, really well, and it's still going well. The playthrough's going well, but it was really, really a bit of a stretch, and I knew going into it, I'm like, okay, hey, look, this playthrough is going to be 6 to 8 hours, so even in the event that it flops, it's like a week's gamble, right? So it's, when I make decisions like that, it's like, okay, if I'm going to go super outside the box, I'm not going to be married to it for 30 or 40 hours on stream. And I know at any time, like, I can cut a game and stop playing it, but I don't like doing that at all. I feel like it's, not that I've never done it, but when I play a single player game on Twitch, on the show, I just feel like it sets a really, really rough precedent to can something in the middle of a playthrough. And not to say that there's special exceptions, because they're not, but that's just not my thing. I'm like, okay, if this turns out to be a complete flop, we can still finish through it and take care of business. So that game choice is going really well. It's bringing in, numbers wise, it's, Tarkov's been going well too. We've been like between 700 and 800, sometimes even touching 1,000. But then once Undertale hits, it's like 1,100, 1,200, 1,300. I've even seen 1,400 people watching Undertale, which I know, like, it's a beloved game, and I think a lot of people like seeing someone play it for the first time, especially if it's a game you love. And I know I share those feelings as well. Like, if I see someone playing like Dark Souls first attempt blind, like, I'm always going to click on just for a little bit and see if, like, hey, are they near Ornstein and Smog? I think that's probably I don't want to say universal or universally human feeling, but something that you really like or really, really enjoy. You like to see other people enjoy it for the first time. And I guess what comes to mind too is movies, right? Like, if you have a favorite movie, you watch it with someone who haven't seen it, like something like the Usual Suspects or Star Wars or The Godfather or whatever you can think of, watching someone watch it for the first time or being with someone watch for the first time just feels a little bit different. So I guess I can understand that. But in terms of what it's also made me feel, as always, is super grateful that we could take a chance like that and have something go well. And, because I know there's people in the community that are just watching for Undertale, but the community that sticks around, like, yeah, like, that's cool that you were taking some chances and stuff like that and having fun with it. Not like, oh, hey, what is this guy doing? This isn't what I signed up for. So it's always a good feeling that works like that. So, and you don't always know. And I feel like it's like anything else, you don't know until you try. I got a DM on Twitter earlier today, and it was from someone. He's like, hey, Dan, I want to start streaming. Can you refer me to anyone who can make logos or overlays for my stream? I have a budget of X. And he's like, I can't find anyone in that budget. And I said, look, man, my best advice to you is don't worry about it. Like, just stream. Like, just start streaming and worry about, the logo stuff after. There's people that stream on Twitch with no logos, no nothing, like no overlay. They just stream. And so that was my advice to him. And it's like the same way about, talk about a game. Like, I could sit here and research and poll chat, which I did do. I could poll 18 different places of chat, but until you just do something, you don't know. And, there's times when we can like think that we poll the audience and get a good feeling. It could flop, and the flip side. So bottom line is just like anything else, just do it. And then number one, see how it goes. Number two, see how you feel, see if you like it. And then you can decide, hey, like, yeah, now it's time. It's been streaming for a month. The community's growing, the channel's growing, or at least I'm having a really good time. So now maybe it's time to do it. But I wouldn't it's like putting the apple cart before the horse. You got to just go. And so I feel like that's with anything, right? Like, I've heard it before about, people that want to start running. It's like, hey, I got the right hat, the right sunglasses. I've done 30 hours researching the best shoe for my foot. And it's like, hey, well, have you run it all? No. Well, I'm researching. Well, just run. You may hate running. You may find out that, hey, I'd rather bike. I may rather, do push-ups or play tennis or hopscotch or ride a unicycle. I don't know. So I don't know. I just hope that helps, because that's always helps me. Is if I'm debating something, then for too long, I'm like, all right, enough. It's just time to just do it. And, to tie that in, to like contradict myself, I found myself in that scenario where, this is completely unrelated to anything we normally talk about, but I've been looking for a bike. Like I have the last bike I had was from 2005, it was from college, and I would gladly still ride it, but it's like in shambles. So I started researching on bikes. I'm like, man, these bikes are pretty expensive. Like just a base model bike, I'm like, man, this is a lot of money for a bike. And so I started looking. I'm like, okay, I'm spending time on Facebook. Let me find a deal, because I always like finding deals. Let me find a deal on Facebook. Can't find anything my size. Like bikes are right now. Bike production is at a low and demand is high. I'm like, so spending like weeks trying to find these bikes on Craigslist and Facebook. I'm like, man, I am not finding any bikes, but I'm putting all this time into it. It's like, all right, just get a bike and just go. And now it's a little bit different, but I got to the point where I'm like, all right, I've been messing with this too long. Like, just get one. Like, just find a way. Just get what's available. It may not be exactly what you want, but just get it and be done with it. And, and I don't take that stuff lightly, because this is going super off the beaten path, but I don't buy a lot of things. Like, I just don't. I'm not into stuff. But when I do, like when I decide to like buy a new pair of running shoes or whatever, like a bike, I do take a little bit more time, I think, than normal. Because number one, I obsess over it. But number two, if I buy something, I really want to like it. And I feel like this is something I picked up from, I watched one of the episodes of Marie Kondo, like Tidies Up. It's on Netflix. It's a really interesting concept about cleaning up clutter and stuff in your life. And her kind of take that I learned from is that if you're going to buy something, if say you buy one that's $50 less, but you like it 80% less, just spend a little bit more money on something you're going to take care of, you really genuinely like, because you'll take care of it. It will last longer and things like that. And I know that's not always an option for some people, but for me, that's the difference in buying junk all the time and waiting. And like, all right, hey, I need to buy a bike. Really, what was the difference maker for me is I went to the bike store twice. I'm like, all right, forget it. I'm just going to get my old bike repaired. And I took my bike to the bike shop, and the guy kind of recognized me because he'd seen me there before. I'm like, hey, just give me a quote on this. And he's like, hey, it's going to be like, I think $180 just to get this bike up and running. If I were you, I would just put it up on Facebook and sell it for $150 and be done with it. And I'm like, that's tremendous eats. I'm like, who would have thought this bike in shambles would be worth $150? I'm like, okay, if I can do that, then I can like reduce the cost of the new bike I'm buying. And so it was just like, it just made sense, right? But I lacked that critical information that this bike that I used to have was actually worth something. But also it got to the breaking point of, all right, you're going back and forth about a bike. It's just, the summer's going to be over, and your time to be able to ride this thing is going to be over by the time you find the perfect one at the perfect price. So kind of just go. So that's my takeaway from that, is just, if you find yourself going back and forth over something like that, just go. And also at the same time, if you're having a lot of indecision about something, maybe it's not the right thing to do either, right? Because a lot of the times I'll know right away, or I'll have a pretty good gut feel about whether I want to buy this or not, and or whether I want to do this or not. And kind of an equalizer to me is if you're feeling like that for an extended period of time, you can get more information by doing and finding more, not by actually doing stuff, right? Not by like researching, but get more information out of doing things, and it will get you to a decision quicker. So I know this has been super convoluted. This has probably been the most convoluted podcast we've ever done, but to tie this back to Undertale is, for whatever reason, I had the bits text to stream was on, or text to talk. So if someone, gave bits during the show, it would read their message. And it caught it in a really funny time. It went really well. But after the show, I'm like, man, this didn't really feel that great. I think it was a really funny moment, but this is not something that I want to have all the time. Even at like, if the community wanted it, just didn't feel right. And so like I yeeted that. And that was like kind of a more quick decision, but it was just going off of the gut. So I don't know. I hope all the rambling podcast today helps you. The other thing I want to talk about too that I learned the past week is, and I'm sure we could go back 6-9 months talking about finding a way to make Tarkov interesting on the channel. And there was a comment, and I read every comment. I do my best to respond to as many as possible, but I read every comment. And I've been messing around with the analytics on YouTube, asking people like the video more. And there was a comment saying, Dan, like if you look at the ratio, not the number of likes, but the ratio of likes per views you're getting is insane. Like it's really, really good. And that kind of taught me, not that in combination with just committing to putting more Tarkov on the YouTube channel, has just taught me a little bit of patience, right? Like I can remember thinking like episode 2 so I'm doing a daily raid of Tarkov every day in the month of June. And I committed to that internally. I'm like, all right, let's do it. And then episode 2 came out. It had like 700-800 views, where Spelunky's getting double that. And I'm like, people don't like it. People don't like it. And then I'm like, just chill, man. Just have some patience. Do it for 30 days. See what happens, and then make a decision. But, just because one episode doesn't do well in your head, like, doesn't mean it's not doing well. If people are enjoying it, they're enjoying it. Just be okay with that and have some patience. And little do you know, I know it's only been a week, but now and this is not really fair because it gives like instant feedback loop. But, there's now Tarkov daily raids that are matching Spelunky. And I'm like, man, I wonder what would happen if I just would have been a little more patient with the Tarkov stuff. Because you guys know I've like thrown different formats out the window, edited ones. I'm like, oh, I edited them. It's just, you sometimes just got to have patience. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. Is I really enjoy episodic stuff, making episodic stuff on YouTube that is not the same, right? So like non-linear gameplay. So Tarkov's not linear, Spelunky's not linear, Last of Us is linear. There's a beginning, middle, and end. But Tarkov, you could watch a video, even though it's not edited, you don't know what the heck's gonna happen. Like, we could find night vision, we could get shot the first minute of the episode. Spelunky, we could take the thing all the way to Yama. We could have an incredible, hilarious death. It's hilarious for you and painful for me, but you just don't know. And I've really kind of taken to that because that's what I really enjoy making right now. And I like mixing it in with some edited stuff, but I don't know. I just know that I like having stuff out there where people can count on it. Tarkov's every day at 5 p.m. Spelunky's been running for 75 days every morning at 8 a.m. And it's cool. Like people are like, oh man, I watch this with my coffee, or I like that. And I like the games we're playing. And I don't want to say we figured out YouTube. That's not the case at all, but we got into a nice YouTube rhythm that I'm really, I won't say satisfied with, but excited to work towards every day. And, doing as much as I can to stay ahead of the game and get videos done ahead of time, where before it's kind of like helter skelter. But anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate all the love on the podcast. We're approaching the Rare Air episode 96 ever so soon in a couple weeks. But if you guys have any specific questions for me and you'd like me to answer on the podcast, I want to get back to more of that. I feel like before, when we used to do these audio update style podcasts, I would always answer questions then. Use the hashtag DG podcast on Twitter and use that. I'll check that, or send me a DM on Discord or on Instagram, instagram.com/DanGheesling. My DMs are open, or text me 313-241-9639, 313-241-9639. If you don't have Instagram or Twitter, I'm guessing you probably have a phone that you're listening to this on. So if you have a question you want to answer on the podcast, hit me up there. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. And I will see you guys next Monday.